There's no particular industry limitation. So again, this is not technology, this is a business operating system. So I guess if they've hit the ceiling, if they're trying to grow a business, and you might have a leadership team of anything from 3 to 10 people, 10's probably a bit big, 3 to 7. And if they've hit a ceiling and they're going, we really want to get our business through this glass ceiling to the next level, that's where I can help.
Welcome to The Glass Ceiling, the podcast where business leaders share their stories, struggles and triumphs.
There is a lot in that. There's a lot of learning.
We sort of had different views on how the business should be ran.
The next 10 years looks like for South Australia.
Startup's the easiest. I'm your host, Marissa Hankinson from Wavebreaker, and I'm passionate about amplifying their voices. Join me as we explore the highs and lows of innovation, entrepreneurship and leadership. From founders to CEOs, our guests will share their insights, experiences and advice on how to succeed and make a lasting impact. Get ready for inspiring conversations and valuable lessons. Let's shatter the glass ceiling, one story at a time. Dean, welcome to The Glass Ceiling. We're on season 2 now, and thank you very much for joining us. I'm a bit intrigued because when I gave you a call, you were in Ballarat waiting for the weather to clear.
I was, yes.
So I'm a bit intrigued about that, and I think we're going to definitely diverse into that. But tell us a little bit about who you are, what your businesses are, and a little bit about yourself.
Sure, thank you. So Dean Calvert is my name, obviously. So 29 years ago, I started Calvert Technologies, which is a managed service provider. So we are the IT department for the businesses that we support throughout mostly South Australia, the Northern Territory, a little bit into Victoria. We're the guys that say, have you tried turning it off and on again? And it actually is a real thing. That's for another conversation. Although on the 1st of August, I did sell the company. So we're now part of Blackbird IT, which is a larger, more mature organisation. And this is what I call my legacy project, because outside of IT, I'm a pilot or flight instructor, and I'm also a cyclist. And there are people, including my wife, who think they are dangerous pursuits. So I have to think about, well, what happens to my customers and my staff if something happens to me? If I fall out of the sky, much less likely. If I get hit by somebody on my bicycle, is more likely.
Yeah.
And my kids have got no interest in running the business. They're grown up, but they've seen enough of it. They don't want to be involved in IT. So this opportunity came along for us to become part of the Blackbird family, and I'm really happy about this. And it's, as I call it, that legacy project. So I was in Ballarat because I'd flown myself there, because something else that I'm doing, I do have a lot of things I do, is I am the only licensed EOS practitioner or implementer in South Australia. EOS is the entrepreneurial operating system. It's not software. It's a way of harmonizing and orchestrating a business and making it run better. So I work with entrepreneurial business leaders and their teams to help them run a better business. And I happen to fly myself to Ballarat, work with a client, and then fly back.
Okay, but you got a bit hemmed in with the weather.
The weather was not good for the flight back, and in fact I was there again last week, and I had to wait for the weather to pass, for the cloud to lift, for it to be safe. So I take a safety first approach in everything I do.
Yeah.
And I'm combining aviation and the growing people. My personal passion in life is growing people, so enabling and equipping them to achieve their greatest potential. And so being able to combine your passion and your purpose, which is that flying. I've wanted to be a pilot since I was 8 years of age. Now I'm a flight instructor. I teach people to fly, which I just absolutely love, but then I also get to help teach and coach business leaders in business outside of the technology. And so that's, this last month has been pretty big and interesting. And whilst we're on the train that's running forward, 7.5 weeks ago, my wife and I became grandparents to a beautiful little girl. So life has been very interesting with selling my company, transitioning into the larger business, the EOS practice, grandparenting. So if I look a little bit tired, that's because there's been a lot going on.
A lot going on in the last. So how have you personally been handling that? There's a lot coming at you. So what do you use yourself to cope with all this change? Because that's a lot of change in a very short space of time. So what are you doing personally to take that into or absorb it?
Well, over the last month, there hasn't been so much being able to stop and unwind. I cope with change fairly well, and I'm a fairly high energy person. I'm very fortunate that I can cope with a lot of things. So what I will do once I get to the other side of this whole business location transition, which I handed the keys back to the old office yesterday, and as the weather starts to improve, I'll get back on my bicycle. So I'll be riding with some mates tomorrow morning, which is part of my happy place.
Yeah.
Flying, just getting up there, and because you're completely present, you don't get distracted by email and messages and everything else. You need to be present for safety reasons.
Yeah.
And so I find that quite relaxing and restorative, and time with my family. So we had Father's Day's the weekend just gone, and had my family over Saturday morning and spent time with them, got to hold a granddaughter, and I just find that really refreshing too. So that's how I cope with those sorts of things. And you need to be able to adopt change. I think as a business leader, you need to be prepared to adopt and deal with change. If you just say, we've always done it this way, so that's how we're going to keep doing it, you're going to find yourself banging your head against the wall, because change is inevitable. You can't stop it.
I was going to say, I think change is the only constant nowadays that happens. So 29 years ago, so what got you into IT?
A little bit of backstory. So I wanted to be a pilot in the Air Force. Ever since I was 8, that's where I was headed.
Did you do the cadet, like the Air Force cadets and all that, or not?
No, I didn't. And I look back and I go, why did I not do that? So as a family growing up, we were very poor. So we didn't have money for me to do extra pursuits. And I saw the Air Force as a way of me getting my wings. So that very first flight as about an 8-year-old, the plane took off, my stomach went down, and that feeling, it's like, this is what I want to do. All of my schooling was aligned toward being in the Air Force. And so I was very focused on that. I went to the Defence Force Academy in year 12 for a few days, like a work experience, and was still absolutely, yes, this is what I want to do. I applied to the Air Force, went right through, got to the end, and they said, you would be the youngest on base. So we suggest you go off and get a year's life experience before you come back. I said, well, look, what I'll do is I'll do my degree, come back, I'll join as an officer, do my 4th year university,
what did you do your
honours.
degree in?
I did a Bachelor of Science in Chemistry.
Okay.
So I knew how to blow things up, and it was interesting at Flinders University.
That would align to the Air Force, possibly.
Yes, it does in some ways. I wanted to do physics, but the maths were just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And computing was just starting to come out, and I had a natural bent toward the computers. But chemistry is where I landed. No pun intended. During that time, I met my now darling wife, Vivian, and the Air Force phoned me and asked me to come back and reapply. And I said, look, I'm going to wait, do my degree, and then I'll come back. 2nd year university is when I met Vivian, and we just knew that we were going to be together. 3rd year university, I went back to the Defence Force Recruiting Centre on Curry Street, where it was at the time. Went in, sat and watched the video, and this voice in my head said, you don't want this anymore.
Okay.
And it was like, wow. And I got up and I walked out. And I've been mostly at peace with that. Every once in a while, I'll see the FA-18s or the F-22s or the F-35s flying. I think that could have been me, but I can't live with regret. I've learnt over years, just don't live with regret. You've got to accept what's happened and go forward. It's really important in business. Yeah. I applied to Qantas Flight School that were just starting out at Parafield when I was finishing university. And they had 75 placings. I was in the final 100, went to Sydney, had the interviews,
and that was
the
with
medicals.
Qantas,
that was with Qantas. Just missed out. So all of this build up through my life of aviation, what I was going to do, and it amounted to nothing. So I was like, well, what do I do? And I had this natural affinity with computers. So at Flinders University, they'd get some new computer, which was an MRI or a gas spectrometer or something, and there was no manual. And they look at me and they go, can you write the manual for this? And so that was my sort of extra little part-time thing. I'd work out how the computer worked, how to use the applications, and I put that together. So when I came out of university and no aviation, it's like, well, what do I do? And I found myself working for a business products company that did photocopiers, faxes, computers. Yeah. And I was in the service department for the computers, working with this relatively new technology called Microsoft Windows version 3.
Version 3. So what would this be? Would this be like 32 years ago?
This would be 1992 it was. Okay. So yeah, 32 years ago. 3.5-inch diskettes, 5 1/4 had just phased out. And I'd set these computers up and go out and install them at business sites. No training. I was just dropped in it. And the expression I use at work is I Bear Grylls it. So I just get dropped in with very little information. You've got to work it out and you've got to deliver success. And that's probably sums up my life over the last 32 years where I'm actually able to do that. There are different people. Some people like a lot of detail before they will take a step. I can survive on little information. I sort of thrive on that. But I'm not very good at finishing things. I'm good at starting and then handing it off to somebody else to finish it.
And this is where Calvert Technologies came in.
That's where Calvert Technologies came in. Yeah, so coming back to your original question. So I moved to another organisation, the same, photocopiers, faxes, computers, first year of marriage. And then I was out visiting a client one day, came back, the front door was locked. They'd gone into administration.
Oh, no.
So through that, I'd met a gentleman who did Unix consulting and Dataflex programming, and he was good at that, but he didn't understand Windows so well. Windows for Workgroups was a networking operating system that had just come out. So it was Microsoft's early competitor to Novell. And he said, can you help me with this sort of stuff? So I started doing some service consulting with organizations that he looked after. So I just fell into it. So I never set out to start a business. Over time, other people found out about me and what I could do, and they wanted to engage me directly. And so I started looking after them, helping do their computer bits and pieces. And here we are now, ultimately 32 years after I sort of fell into it, but 29 years officially after starting my own business.
Yeah.
And
that's a massive achievement in this time. You know, you just said, like, you know, your first job, you got there and they went into liquidation. So, how big did Calvert, is it grown, shrunk? Has it sort of changed over the years?
It has, yes. So 1998 is when I first moved out of home into the city.
Yeah.
And that was triggered because I delivered some computers boxes to a client, and I opened one of them up, and my son, who was just a toddler, had posted a Matchbox car through the handhold side of the box into this. And I thought, it's time to move out of the house now. So we've grown. At the moment, we're about 14. We've been as big as 17. I've never been one to be an empire builder. It just doesn't interest me. And because I haven't had a business partner as well, and I think I've seen in other businesses where they've got a business partner, it actually is good to be able to shoulder that burden with each other.
Yeah.
And not having had that, not having any real business training in the background, just sort of learning it as I go. But a lot of people have been successful. Look at Atlassian, those two guys, that was their first business. But I've just done what I've done, made a lot of mistakes over the years. So we got to 17, we're about 14 now. And look, I'm happy with that size, but with our acquisition by Blackbird and moving in, the resultant entity is 62 or so people.
And is Blackbird's national?
No, Blackbird's here in South Australia.
Oh, it's just South Australia.
Yeah,
wow.
So we've moved into their office at Dulwich, and it's a really good fit. It's a really good fit, and I'm really happy with how this is all coming together.
Way back in the past, I was involved in some mergers and acquisitions. How have your staff taken the process of being acquired by Blackbird IT? Have you lost any staff, or have they all come over? What was obviously a culture fit's very important for you, but what was it like managing your staff during this transition?
Well, it's interesting. You've got to hold off as long as possible before you tell them. And I did have a couple of staff say, why didn't you tell us about this earlier? And you don't want to create uncertainty. So as I said, I can deal with little information be dropped in with a lot of uncertainty. Most people don't like change. They don't like uncertainty. They like a lot of information. So I said, if I'd come to you months ago and said, I'm in discussions about selling my company, and if it hadn't happened, then you'd be thinking, well, what's going on? What's this uncertainty? So it would be really unfair to tell the staff early we might be selling. And I've had to try and get that message across. Naturally, that's deer in the headlights response from people about that, because will I have a job? Who am I going to report to? What's my commute to work look like? So we've had to deal with all of those. For the most part, they've handled it well, and I've had to try and coach and guide them through that. And I think
probably you staying within the business is probably helping with some continuity.
Yes. Yeah, it's still Calvert Technologies. We've just moved office. And so now that we're in an office where there's a lot of natural light, we're overlooking the parklands, they're really good people to work with, the team. I've made sure that I didn't dictate how, because we're spread out across a couple of tenancies in the building. So I'm in with the other directors of Blackbird, working with those leaders. The Calvert team are in the northern office, and we're being very careful about our language. We don't talk about us and them. So there's the northern office and the southern office.
Yeah.
And so my team are in the northern office, and I've let them work out what the layout of it's going to be, where the desks are going to be, putting up the screens, etc. Because rather than me dictate it, it helps them settle in. They feel a bit of ownership about that. And we caught up with the Blackbird team about a month or so before the actual transition and had a barbecue with them and got to see through the office, show the staff where they would be working. I don't think there's a playbook for this sort of thing.
No.
And it's normal that people would be a little bit concerned about what's going on. But Blackbird are on a growth path and they don't want anyone to go. They'd like to retain people because finding good people is difficult, particularly where you've got people that are a cultural alignment. And so our culture and their culture do align well. We never competed with Blackbird out in the marketplace in all these years, which is very unusual, but it's made for a very healthy relationship there. And I've known Richard and Ben for probably 14 years or so, and they've been consistent throughout that time as well. So I felt really confident about this coming together. I've been tapped on the shoulder by people numerous times over the years, and it hasn't made sense for various reasons. But now with granddaughter, knowing what my purpose and passion is in terms of the aviation and the EOS side of things, considering legacy as well as I get into my middle years of life. And this just all made sense. I feel very much at peace with it. I hope my staff have that peace. They do see opportunity for them to be part of a larger team, career growth. So I'm really excited about the future for my staff, our staff, got to use our staff, our collective customers, I think is a really good
and the customers have been good in transitioning over as well?
Every leader that I called and personally spoke to were really happy about it. When I explained the story behind it, the legacy, they know about my aviation, they know about my cycling, because we've got personal relationships. They know I've become a grandfather, talking about legacy and protecting, and they just like, this is great, this makes sense. And so it was really good. So I loved working with so many business leaders over the years. And part of our purpose and our niche is our purpose is growing people. That comes from my personal purpose. And our niche is leveraging technology for transformation. And I've seen that when I go into an organization, I see the pain that they're having with the tech that they've got, because IT people tend to go in with a technology first approach. I go in with a business and people first approach. And so where I've been trusted to do my job and affect that change and that transformation in organization over time. And I look back at some of our best clients have been with us, 14, 15, 16 years.
And that's a testament in itself when you've got that retention or length of time for clients as well.
And seeing the transformation in their business. And it just brings me a lot of joy in that. And that's developed that trust with those leadership teams as well. And so, it's been a really good journey.
So you mentioned a few times EOS, and we'll go into that a little bit. So you said it's an
entrepreneurial operating system. So it's not software. It's a way of harmonizing and orchestrating all the parts of your business. I work with the leadership teams of the business on 3 key things we call vision, traction, healthy. Vision is about getting them all aligned on where they're going and how they're going to get there. Traction is instilling discipline and accountability throughout the entire organization. So no matter where you look, you see your people executing on that vision. And healthy is about making you a more cohesive, fun-loving, well-oiled machine, people that like to work with each other, because quite often in entrepreneurial teams, they don't. And so it's really getting about strengthening. This is not a sales pitch, but it just comes naturally. There's 6 key components of a business that we work on strengthening and helping them run the tools themselves. So the practice name being Business Co-Pilot is very deliberate. As a flight instructor, my job is to teach a student to become a pilot so they can deal with all of the bumps and things that happen, and I can get out of the aircraft. And it's such a thrill when I can send a student solo and they get to fly on their own. EOS is designed exactly the same way. It's not for me to entrench myself in their business. It's to teach the leadership team how to use these tools, how to use the skills so they can go solo as well. And so that's the business co-pilot, bringing the aviation and the coaching together. I think that's a
I was going to ask, I was assuming if it was aligned. And did you use EOS in Calvert Technologies?
Yes. We've been running EOS since about 2016 and it's been very transformative. I picked up, so there's a book, Traction by Gino Wickman, and I picked it up in 2015, started to read it, and I wasn't ready for it. I put it down for a few months, and then I picked it up again beginning of 2016. We were on holidays up in the Gold Coast, and I read it, and I couldn't put it down. And it was like, wow, this is talking to me. Similarly, if you go back earlier in the 2000s, I read the E-Myth Revisited. I met Michael Gerber, undertook some of that E-Myth, but I wasn't ready yet for it all. But I was ready for EOS, and it's been incredible how it's helped transform our business.
And saying that you operated that within Calvert Technologies, and look where you're doing now, and the fact that you transitioning your team into another organisation, it's a good cultural fit, and you can exit that business in due course. I know that you're an employee now. How's it feel being an employee?
For the first time in 30 years, I'm an employee. It doesn't really feel different because they've been very good. Having been self-employed for 29 years, I think they understand I don't need to be managed.
No.
So I just do my job. I don't have an employee mindset. I don't clock watch. I just do what I've got to do. If I've got to do extra hours, if I've got to work on a weekend, then so be it. But what I've now got to look at is what do I put on my don't do list? So many people have a to-do list.
Yes.
I now have to work on being part of a larger organisation. Whilst I still have that sense of ownership, I need to move things from my to-do list to my to-not-do list. Allow other people to do that. In EOS, we talk about delegate, elevate. I need to delegate out the things that I'm not great at doing, and I need to elevate to do just the things that I'm great at and love doing.
It's not your burden anymore.
No, no.
I think you said that before. It's like, you didn't have a business partner, etc. So that's got to be a little bit of a mind shift for you. So what are some of the things that are on your don't do list? Can I ask?
Sure. So I don't do payroll anymore. So all I ever did was make the money go out. But I don't have to do that anymore. I can see the bank accounts. But I said to the CFO, I used to my morning routine would be, as I'm making breakfast, transfer the incoming money to our main trading account. Yeah. Because you have one account for the incoming, one account for the outgoing. I don't do that anymore. I can see it, but I just said, I don't touch it.
Yeah.
And I said, I feel fine with that. So I don't touch the money. I've never done the invoicing piece of things. I've got to keep out of doing service tickets because I can get in.
So have you always been like, even though you've been the leader of Calvert, have you always had that element of being on the tools as well? Have you ever really, truly...
I've tried several times. I get attracted back into it as well, but now I actually need to be more deliberate about it. I need to free up some space so that the rest of the team can grow into that space, because at some point, the Calvert Technologies piece will go. I'm at peace with that. I don't have a date on when that will happen. At the moment, it's Calvert Technologies, a Blackbird business, a Blackbird company. Ultimately, it'll be Blackbird IT. And I'm fine with that. And it will
merge over time.
Oh, yeah, in time, at whatever time it happens to be. But I'm at peace with that. So I need to get out of being on the tools. I need to help work on the people side of things, help grow the people, teach them as much as what I know to give them to do so I can get out of the way. I might get to have a holiday. It's 7.5 years since I actually had real time off. And prior to that was 10 years ago. So I need to now add the value I can to the business so it can run and be even more successful. It's got to be more than me. Absolutely.
Yeah. And let's talk about the business co-pilot. Is that standalone from what you've done with Blackbird? So you've got the aviation, the flight instructor. To be really honest, I'm sort of sat here going, you ran Calvert, trained to be a flight instructor, because that would take numerous hours, trained in this EOS, has got this business. So I'm a bit sort of, I'm sort of going, I can sort of see why you haven't had a holiday.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yes.
So where is the next stage? How do you see the future?
As I become less relevant to the IT side of the business, then it's doing more flight instructing. So I'm a senior flight instructor for gyroplanes, which they look like little helicopters, but they fly like an airplane. They're a lot of fun. It's like a motorbike in the sky. And I never knew I would enjoy flight instruction in those as much as I did until I got there.
On your LinkedIn profile, when I went into your LinkedIn, I was like, what is this super duper red? Well, I could tell it wasn't a helicopter, if that makes sense, but I had no idea what. So that's called a
gyroplane. They take off and land like an aeroplane. They're the best of aeroplane, helicopter, and parachute.
Right.
So you don't suffer turbulence. People look at them and they go, oh, I wouldn't want to get in that. And you say, well, why? They don't suffer turbulence. So an aeroplane, you get thrown around. A gyroplane, you don't. You can use them for doing very tight turns. They can do maneuvers that aeroplanes can't do. The visibility is incredible. They can fly low and slow. I've had the joy of flying up into the Flinders Ranges, to Mildura, Renmark, Clare, down to the southeast, flying over the River Murray when it was in flood and getting video footage to share with people whose shacks were being inundated, so I could give them updates on that, and taking people up and they go, wow. And so I just get a real thrill. Yeah, flying is great, but flying with somebody else and sharing the joy with them is incredible. So as a senior flight instructor for gyros, which is like a real privilege.
Is that out of Parafield? Where'd you fly out of?
We're out of Rollo's Airfield, which is near Murray Bridge, just north of Monarto Zoo. So I take people for flights around Monarto Zoo. They see where the giraffes are and the lions, etc. So doing that is great. I will be a fixed wing flight instructor later this year. So I'm just working on my hours for that, but I can fly myself around in the plane.
Yeah.
And so that's I guess the passion part of the aviation piece. That's that 8-year-old me getting that fix now. And then the business co-pilot, so that if you think of company structures, the Calvert has been sold. I've got a separate company which owns the gyroplane, which is what I use for my flight instruction, but there's also business co-pilot. That's how I operate from that for the EOS side. Okay. So if I do 2 days a week flight instruction, and if I do 2 days, maybe 3 of the business co-pilot EOS coaching, I'm happy.
You've got a good balance.
Yeah. And then grandparenting, of course. I'll be looking after my one grandchild now, but there'll be more, and I'll be the grandpa that I'll teach them to fly. I'll take them camping.
You'll be the adventurous grandpa.
I will. Yeah.
It is very interesting you talk about dreams and things like that, because my eldest always wanted to be a pilot. I went off to University of SA and went and did Bachelor of Aviation, started to fly. He was at the Flight Academy doing his graduate diploma as well at the same time. Literally, he had Christmas Day off. It was a bit full on. And then COVID hit. And it was like, well, that's not really a career option potentially anymore on the path that he was on. So he's taken a different path now, but don't know if he'll go back to it or not.
There's lots of pilot jobs out there. There is a group on Facebook for pilot jobs, and there's always things being posted. Yeah. So for commercial pilots. But I find, having had the joy of flying both gyro and aeroplane, look, between you and me, because no one's listening, flying a gyro is so much more fun. You get in a plane and you point it and you fly. Yeah. It does become a bit boring. And so
it did bore Ollie, unfortunately. Yeah. But he wants to be a pilot. He misquoted to me, and I did lose my temper with him, but I didn't realise he does want to be a pilot, but he wants to be a pilot on ships. That's his ultimate goal, where they bring them into all the ferry, like the ports and stuff like that. But when he said, I think I want to be a pilot, I went, you've just given up your degree. And then he went, not that kind of pilot, Mum. Yeah. So I didn't even know there was...
Pilot of a ship.
Yes. Yeah. So I did not know there was multiple different types of pilots, but that's okay.
Yeah.
What type of companies are you working with on this business co-pilot? You mentioned entrepreneurs, but entrepreneurs can be anything.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit.
So it's best. So most of the best businesses to work with. So entrepreneurial mindset. So they're afraid of the status quo. They're more adoptive of change. 10 to 250 staff, typically the sort of business. There's no particular industry limitation. So again, this is not technology. This is a business operating system. So I guess if they've hit the ceiling, if they're trying to grow a business, and you might have a leadership team of anything from 3 to 10 people, 10's probably a bit big, 3 to 7. And if they've hit a ceiling and they're going, we really want to get our business through this glass ceiling to the next level, that's where I can help, because I know how to help unpack it. I teach them the tools, but the answers are in the room, and it's just about helping facilitate them identifying those answers. So we help them in the 6 key components, where is vision, setting that vision, knowing where they are and where they're going to head to, having the right people in the right seats in the business, having the right data to operate, to have your business running by the right data, not emotions and feelings and gut instinct. Being able to deal with your issues as they come up and solve them, having your processes properly documented and followed by everybody, and then just executing on that traction, having good meeting pulse, healthy meeting pulse, and good goals to work toward. And so businesses where they go, we need to do better, we're hitting the ceiling, that's what I want. 10 to 250, any sort of industry. They can be anywhere. I can coach them remotely, or I can fly to them. I can do that.
is there a time frame for this? Is it done over a 12-month, 3-year? What is the goal set, the vision set by them? And the time
they
frame?
set the vision, yeah. So my engagement with them is typically 2 years.
Okay.
And so at 2 years, they would be proficient with the tools and able to operate themselves. If they decide to keep me on to help them through that process, that's fine. I'm happy to be part of it. But my job is not to ingrain myself in the business. It's to teach them the tools, get them up and running. I say it's get them to a safe altitude. They can operate their business and then they can fly. So again, bringing those two industries together. If they get there in 18 months, great. But I don't rush it. So similarly with training someone to fly, you don't rush it. People say, how long will it take me to get my pilot certificate? It's like learning to drive a car. It's when you are safe, when you are ready for me to get out and for you to fly on your own, that's when it is. Same with the EOS side of things. It's when you've got it and it's all ticking along and you can do it safely, then you go.
Okay. So I need to ask.
I know what's coming.
Is your gyroplane your Batmobile?
Not quite, no. So I know this is the whole, the Batman
Oz, which was a keynote that I listened to you give probably a good 8-9 years ago, maybe?
Yes, could be.
Which is a bit scary. But please, pray tell, who is Batman Oz?
So Batman Oz is a social handle I've got for Twitter. I'll still call it Twitter, Instagram, etc. And the idea behind that is when you look at the traditional superhero universe, I know there's all new ones now, but traditionally, there's only one superhero who has no superpowers, and that's Batman or Bruce Wayne. He just uses the skills and the abilities that he's got, the resources at hand to do a good job for the people of Gotham. And Bruce Wayne does it under the guise of Batman because it's not about him. He doesn't want the attention. He doesn't want people looking at him going, oh, you're amazing. Do it as Batman, go and do that, and then he can just be Bruce Wayne doing the right thing. And so I align with that because I have no superpowers. I have some skills, I've got some capabilities and resources, and if I can do what's right to help other people to leave this world in a better place than how I found it when I first came in, then I've done my job. And I don't want the glory, I don't want the accolades. And so I tell people, you can be Batman. And I've had times with my son as he was growing up, we had Batman moments where we helped other people, changed our day, but it was the right thing for these people. We literally saved some people's lives one day out in the Flinders Ranges. And as we drove away, I said, that was a Batman moment. And he sat and thought for a moment. He goes, oh yeah. So I encourage people that they can be Batman because just use the abilities that you've got to help others, to do the right thing for other people, and that will have a positive change.
Fantastic. Dean, thank you so much for coming on The Glass Ceiling. It's been great to hear what happened, what's happening, and what the future is going to bring for you. And I wish you all the luck, but I don't think you're going to need it.
No, thank you, Marissa. Thank you for the time.
No worries. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of The Glass Ceiling. If you've liked what you heard, please subscribe, as we'd love to have you as part of our community. We're grateful to our guests for sharing their inspiring stories and insights with us. This podcast was brought to you by Wavebreaker. Join us next time as we shatter the glass ceiling, one story at a time.